Good morning, sisters and brothers, and welcome to another episode of Faith Matters, where we talk about faith because faith matters. They do it every week. Don't blame me. What can I tell you? What can I tell you? It is a beautiful day here at Epiphany. It's only about 146 degrees out right now, and we are very happy that St. Carrier, the patron saint of air conditioning, continues to smile upon us. That is a wonderful thing.
Yes, it is.
You'll notice that it's just Jen and I on camera this morning. Father Chris is on a little vacation with his wonderful wife Sharon. We wish them peace and comfort, most especially because we're going away and they're going to be here next week. So summer has truly arrived.
Arrived is good.
Arrived. Well, you know.
Yeah, arrived works.
I had a boss a million years ago who said if you couldn't spell a word at least 3 different ways, you're not being creative enough. Kind of like that.
I'm very creative.
You are very creative. That's
yes,
true.
I am.
We have a wonderful crowd of theologians here in the room with us, and I see some folks coming in online, so it's wonderful to have everybody with us. If you are not familiar with how we do this, this is a guided discussion, if you will, on the gospel. So I'll read the gospel, and then we'll just talk about it. Questions, comments, both from the folks here live in the space and also online. If you're watching online and you have a point you want to make or a question you want to ask, just type it in the comments, and Jen is going to be the designated speaker for the online congregation. So we find a way for it all to work out. This morning we are in Mark's gospel. And it's a pretty short gospel. Let's hear what Mark says to us. When evening had come, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?"
Okay, so here's my first question in the box.
All right.
Louder.
Yeah.
Louder. How many other things like this have the disciples already been exposed to? Because he says, "Do you still have no faith?" It's like, I've done these things before, and you've been there, and you've seen them, and do you still not believe that I am who I say I am?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Let me set the stage for you, and I'll get to you in one second.
Yeah.
So this is the 4th chapter of Mark, so we're relatively early on. Immediately preceding this, we have Jesus naming the apostles, the disciples, selecting the 12. Now that doesn't mean there were only 12. We've talked about that in prior conversations a lot. There was a big crowd of people, but he singled out 12 to be his disciples, his apostles. Then he taught the great crowds. And there were so many people that they were all up on this hillside, and he actually got into a boat on the Sea of Galilee right near the shore so that they could see him. So crowd everywhere up on the hillside, and Jesus, and he taught them some of the parables, some of the greatest hits parables, if you will. The parable of the sower, parable of the mustard seed, which we just talked about last week. And so this has all happened right before this story. And so it's now nighttime, and it's time to go.
Had he already done any of his healings by this point?
He
Or
had
any
done
of
some.
that?
So
Because-
naming of the disciples was different than establishing them, right? So by the 4th chapter, we'd had some experiences with Jesus already. There was still far more to come, but he had been teaching. And remember, when we talked about the parable of the mustard seed, it said he taught the crowds in parables, but to the disciples, he explained it all clearly. So they were given that sort of insider knowledge, that stuff that Brian's always craving.
Yeah.
The back of the book kind of answer key stuff. Jesus gave them all that. So it's probably not beyond the realm of possibility that Jesus is going, really, guys? After all, really? Okay.
But it was early in Christ's ministry.
It
Because he was
was.
still preaching in Galilee.
Yeah.
And so many of the works that occurred further south in the vicinity of Jerusalem and other towns hadn't happened yet.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's not as extraordinary as all that to think that it's early on and these guys really don't know
Not yet.
exactly what's going on.
Yep.
The Sea of Galilee, by the way, is kind of like Lake Tahoe. Mountains aren't as high, but as you said in your sermon, it is mountainous, well, hilly mostly on the to the west and to the east.
Yeah, what they call a mountain, we probably wouldn't, but
Right.
Right.
But to the north, of course, is Mount Hermon, and it has snow on it. So
Yeah.
the water that replenishes the Sea of Galilee comes from the mountains in Lebanon, and they're pretty far away, and yet very easy to see from the Sea of Galilee.
right.
What a beautiful view.
It is.
Yeah.
Cindy.
How loud was his voice?
Yeah, there were no microphones. You had to use your outside voice when you were. I mean, Jesus was preaching to thousands of people,
Yeah, that's always blown me away like that.
right?
He had a personal
Maybe good
amplifier.
acoustics from the mountains too.
Right.
Well, that's part of the reason I think he got down in the boat was because the people were all up on the hillside, so he could sort of talk up at them and his voice would carry a little bit
It's the
more.
first
He put his God
amphitheater.
voice on.
His
did.
God voice, right?
But I mean, keep in mind, sound amplification has not been around all that long. You think of some of the really big names in preaching, you know, Luther, Wesley, they would preach to thousands of people and they would just stand outside and they would use their really loud voice.
Like opera.
But a lot of people could barely hear them. I mean, thousands of people, you're going to be far enough away that you can't hear. But you're right.
Politicians still scream when they talk.
Right.
Yeah,
They do.
yeah.
In the outside voice.
Yeah, yeah. Even with amplification, as a speaker, you're taught to project, and really to use your voice in different ways. Gary.
Isn't this just really a metaphor for our lives? I mean, obviously Jesus knew the storm was coming, and yet he set out the boats. Now I've often wondered what happened to the other boats. They stayed with them or they quit. Jesus was asleep as the storm came, almost like, hey, in this pandemic comes and, you know, and we say, what are you doing, Lord? Why aren't you saving us? What are you doing? You're abandoning us. It's almost the same type of thing. And also, it also seems like people that God picks to do things have gone through some type of difficulties. And this just seems to be the pattern of what we go through as a society and as people.
Yeah, the storms of life. Yeah.
You're going to like the sermon.
Yes. Hit it on the nail, Gary.
I haven't
Really?
used my singing voice in 15 months, so I'm going to speak this, but there's a really good song that says, sometimes he calms the storm with a whispered peace be still. He can settle any sea, but that doesn't mean he will.
Mhm.
Sometimes he sometimes he holds us close and lets the winds and waves grow wild. Sometimes he calms the storm, but other times he calms his child.
Yeah. That's pretty prophetic.
That's
yeah.
good. I like that.
I know, there's a lot of songs with the peace be still in there.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that
Yep,
peace
do
be
not be
still,
afraid.
does that ring any bells for anybody?
Yep.
Jesus says that a lot to people when they're all freaking out, right? That is a very common phrase that Jesus uses throughout the Gospels. In fact, almost any time that there is a heavenly visitor, an angel,
I thought
or a
of that.
messenger, the very first thing is they say is, be not afraid, be at peace, it's okay, don't flip out on me.
And be
Right.
still, because, you know, I
I may say something that you want to hear, so just.
Right. I came all the way from heaven. You might want to listen to this.
Right. Well, it's kind of like when a child is having an issue and you tell them to breathe.
Mhm.
Take a breath.
Yes.
Take a deep breath, let it out slowly. Once they're calm, then you can talk to them.
Right. We say that to adults too.
Yeah.
They say.
So, right.
I use that a lot in pastoral care.
By the way, the traditional site where this sermon was given by Christ, there's a bus stop.
Oh.
The Israeli bus company is called Egged, and they're all over the country. But there's a bus stop.
So does that mean Jesus had to stop talking when the bus came through because they couldn't see him anymore?
Everyone on the bus.
Got there.
Yeah,
That's how the crowds got
exactly,
there,
like
right?
us. That's how you do it.
And maybe this is being, picky, but the first thing that I saw or heard was, and leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was.
Yeah.
What does that, just as he was?
Interesting.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
No raincoat.
No, yeah.
No
Yeah.
raincoat.
It's
Yeah,
like,
they
come
didn't
as
take-
you are,
They didn't take time to freshen up or eat or.
I guess not, huh?
That's kind of what I think it is, Kelly. Yeah,
Okay.
it was just like, okay, Jesus, we're all jumping in the boat with you, and we're off.
Get in the boat.
Yeah, didn't because part of the reality of it is one of the reasons he was in the boat was because the crowd all wanted a piece of him, right? They all wanted to touch him. They all wanted their little minute with him. Some of them wanted healing. Some of them wanted to be fed. They all wanted something, and so the boat gave him a little bit of breathing room. And so rather than him get out of the boat and go onto the shore where the crowd would just sort of engulf him, the disciples just joined him in the boat, just like he was. And it was like, okay, we're out of here.
So this was before he walked on the water.
Correct.
Okay, because otherwise it's like, no, it's okay, I don't need a boat.
Yeah, right. He's going to come to you in the night. Right.
I'll catch up with you guys. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that wasn't this.
Okay.
No.
We're still very early here.
I have a question as to whether you see something in this too. And I get Gary's metaphor about the storms of our life, and then they always seem to be followed by some calm or peace before the next storm arrives. Do you also see the connection to our greatest fear, our own death, which, if our faith is rewarded, will be followed by the greatest peace of all?
Yeah.
You can
lovely.
certainly see that in here,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, that's what the disciples are doing. Here's the text. A great windstorm arose, the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. And they woke him and said, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?"
Yeah.
They didn't wake him up and go, "Hey, Jesus, help us with this storm, will you?" Or start bailing, or something like that. No, we are perishing. We are about to die, Lord.
We're dying.
Yeah, we're dying.
We're dying here, yeah.
Right.
And he's asleep. He's asleep.
He's a Navy guy,
He's right.
Used to the
You know those
floating
Navy
thing.
guys, they're so used to everything.
But yeah.
He's asleep, and he's
And
in like
still no faith.
he's in the seat of honor, right? In these boats, these weren't big boats, by the way. There's usually just like one bench seat, and it has a cushion on it, and that's reserved for either the captain of the boat or the VIP, and that's where Jesus is. It's been a long day for Jesus, and so he's just sort of curled up there, catching some Z's.
Taking his PLN.
Right,
Yeah.
taking his post-liturgical nap, exactly. I know that one well. In fact, in a few hours, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, they are definitely afraid that they're about to die.
Yeah.
And that's what starts this. And what they do is they give kind of an angry response, don't they?
Yeah.
They don't cry out, "Oh Lord,
not
save
care.
us." They say, "Don't you care that we're perishing?"
Right.
It's kind of passive aggressive.
It is very passive aggressive, yeah. Even then, they know how to do that.
I'm dying over here and you don't care.
Yeah. How can you be asleep
like a
at
Jewish
time
mother,
like
right?
this, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Judy.
I wonder if this is some of the hyperbole that Chris talks about a lot, and it's really a drama and a contradiction
Oh, yeah.
Emphasis.
Oh, there's definitely drama in here, isn't there?
Mhm.
I mean, this is, what, 6 sentences?
There's a lot
But
going
we can
on.
put ourselves in here so easily, can't we? You know, if you just close your eyes, you can, well, first of all, we just opened that door. You're going to feel the heat of Jerusalem and all of that. But you can sort of picture yourself in that boat. You can just feel the rocking of the waves, and then the wind starts to whip up. And imagine the fear among all the other people.
If you've been in a boat when a storm comes up, you know how scary it is.
It is really scary.
Because you could get swamped and drown and
The size of the lake is such that it would probably take, for people to row, an hour to
Wow.
2 hours.
It's a big lake.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about motorboats, you know.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
rowing.
And so they could have been fairly well out into the lake when the weather came up.
Yeah, you get to that sort of point of no return, right? Where going back is just about as far as going forward. So then you have you have a choice to make.
Well, and then the thing that kind of gets me is he says, why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, who then is this? Hello?
Right, they still don't get it.
Did you not get it? He just stilled the wind, or,
Right.
the wind and the waves, and you're still saying, who then is this? That the wind and the wave and the sea obey him. They didn't say, this must be the Son of God.
Right, nope. Nope. All through the ministry they do that.
Who's this guy?
Right.
Yes.
I mean, he had a really kind of interesting message, and I'm sort of bored with being a fisherman anyway, so I'm going to follow him, but I had no idea he was going to do this stuff.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet, right after this, they completely forget about it.
Yeah.
Right? That seems to be the pattern again and again and again. And is there a metaphor there at all? For
Life.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
We,
I'm not getting any chatter, so.
Okay, I figured. We sort of live that way.
Yes.
It's like the guy that gets caught speeding, then cop pulls it over, he gets out, goes, does it again.
Mhm.
Right.
Right. We just don't learn.
We
The
we
easy-
don't
we take the
tend to
hard
learn
way.
lessons
Right.
all that well.
Nope.
Or as I like to say, I have a flat spot on my forehead where I bang it against the wall on a regular basis. 'Cause, we just don't learn. And the disciples didn't either. And honestly, you talk about some of the hyperbole and the drama that's filled in the Gospels. Part of it, I think, is if the disciples got it on minute 1, would we be able to relate?
No.
No, the disciples had to be human in order for us to be able to live the experience through their eyes.
Be in the story.
Right.
We can see ourselves in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've heard me say it a million times. I'll keep saying it. If Peter didn't exist, we would have had to make him up because he's our entry point into the disciples. Here's one of Jesus' favorites. Was with him, witnessed every single miracle, had a ringside seat for it all, and he was as thick as a brick. He just never got it. And then denied him at the end. And yet then, when we get to Acts of the Apostles, then he becomes the hero.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, Kelly and then David.
And to cut ourselves some slack, notice Peter was the most dense, but he was also the favorite.
Right. Yes.
So we can be dense and still be the favorite.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Is that why Dad likes me best?
Yep.
But we all can be the favorite.
The one difference, though, is many times in your life you're afraid,
Yes.
but you brought it on yourself, and so so in that case, to have no faith in yourself, you did this stupidly. So I mean, there is a fundamental difference about being afraid in the presence of Christ and hoping that He will save you versus being afraid, praying to Christ, but knowing that you did a dumb thing.
Yeah.
And that's why you're here.
Yeah.
So there is a
We did.
fundamental difference between those two types of afraid.
Yes. One's awe and the other one's just afraid of what we did and the consequences.
Right.
The consequences of what we did. Right. Yeah, Kim says, Father Chris says, then as now, I'm God's favorite and you are too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like Kelly said. Yeah. Big difference.
So how does Jesus sleep through this storm?
I know, huh?
Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, other than the fact that he might have gone to Annapolis, which we know he
Yes,
didn't,
well-
how does Jesus just sleep soundly through this storm when the waves are crashing over the boat? This is not a big boat, by the
He
way.
was really tired.
It's not enclosed.
It's not
He was
enclosed,
really
it's
tired.
open air.
And it's it's rocking like a cradle, man, right? So,
You're splashing water in my face, I'm probably
well,
waking up.
yeah,
Testament to his divinity, it's probably the divinity in him
Protected.
that's allowing him to do that.
Maybe he faked it just for drama.
maybe he faked it just for drama. Yeah, you're right. He
You see
could've
Jesus like
pretended.
this, one eye open?
Yep.
Right.
I know they're going to start asking me to help them out, but I'm going to wait here a little longer, see what happens.
Judy and I had an episode very similar to this in Alaska
Okay.
3-4 years ago. And, it's a perception. You may be afraid of something, I may not be afraid.
Yeah.
Because I either have confidence, or I've been through it, or I'm dull, I'm dumb, whatever the reason.
Or-
Yeah.
What makes you afraid does not necessarily make me afraid.
Right.
Yeah.
And Jesus was God, so why would he be afraid of a little bit of rain and wind? Yeah, or whatever.
That's the
'Cause he's in
answer.
control.
Jesus
Yeah.
knew there was nothing to fear, so
Yup.
he could sleep through it.
True that.
Sleeping the sleep of the innocent, right? It's like a little baby. Boy, they sleep because they don't know fear. They don't know that life is anything but perfect. Because it's all about them, and everything revolves around them. I know people in their 60s and 70s who are like that.
True.
The human part of them, though, had to be exhausted.
Right.
Yeah.
I've slept through some pretty nasty things when I've been exhausted.
Yes. Yes.
We have.
Physically.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Beat. Mm-hmm.
Jesus, though, seems to pass in and out of the spiritual world in a way that we don't really understand, or at least I don't fully
Yes.
understand.
You're not alone.
No, right.
No, anybody who tells you they do is wrong.
They don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. True.
They don't always explain it, but they make it clear that there was a dimension to Jesus the disciples did not really get.
Right.
They say, we saw this evidence, but we can't explain it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that applies to us, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, really interesting.
I wonder about the connection between, we have a medical doctor, I think, in the room here. So, like, medicine in our physical world, and then the spiritual world. And what overlay, what impact does that have? Because we hear so many stories, and then, Jesus says your sins are forgiven, and a crippled person gets up and walks away. So,
Miracles.
I don't know, is there some connection there, or some overlay that we just don't get?
Yes.
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 Right.
Absolutely.
They call them miracles. Yeah.
No, Jesus wasn't plugged into some sort of Star Trek medicine that is just so far beyond our ability that it was all done that way. It truly is miraculous.
Yeah.
But it is beyond our comprehension.
It is.
And blessedly so, I think.
Yeah. Nancy shared, she said, Jesus was trusting of his Father, and they should have been trusting in him the same. So we're bringing God the Father into this too,
Right.
I guess. Right?
And yet, to throw a monkey wrench in perhaps, there are times when God doesn't still the waters
Yes.
and calm the sea. The Titanic sank.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there were priests and people praying vehemently, please, God, spare us. And they died.
Well, he calmed it afterwards.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
a little too little, too late.
late.
Right?
From our perspective.
Yeah. It's
You
beyond.
believe that physical death is not the end of life,
Who they are.
Right.
Right.
then it's sort of just a waypoint, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes the answer to our prayer is not right now.
Or it's
I got something
Sometimes
better
it's
coming
no.
for you. And
Sometimes
sometimes
it's
it's
no.
no. Yeah.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes he is like the parent that refuses to let the child touch the hot stove.
That too.
Look at what all the people went through in the Holocaust.
Yes.
And, I mean, just horrific. And they probably prayed every day that this would change. Yet they were led to the gas chambers, they were shot, thrown in ditches. And yet, peace ensued afterwards, and out of it all was born Israel.
Right.
Modern Israel, not Israel.
Right. The new. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's something in Elie Wiesel's autobiography where he goes and talks to one of the Hasidic leaders. I can't remember his name. I'm so terrible with names. And this man was left Europe and survived and is able to continue to lead his flock. And so Elie Wiesel, of course, who was in Auschwitz, says, how can you still have faith? I was there. I know what happened. I lost my father. I lost my family. I have so much trouble with faith. How can you have faith? And the rabbi says, because I'm still here. In other words, yes, it was horrible, but the Jewish people survived. That was his answer.
Remnant.
The sad thing is there's still a lot of Nazis in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Lots of them.
Not just in Europe. Yeah.
Not. Yeah. I was going to say, not just Europe. Yeah.
Have we done this justice?
I think so.
It's a short passage.
Yeah. Lots in there though to mullinate.
But powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful stuff. So this morning at the 10 o'clock, we have a baptism.
Yay.
We're going to be baptizing Nate and Frances Henderson's beautiful daughter, Cora. Before they actually leave us, they are moving to Texas. So I know. But one more chance before they go. I did their wedding. I baptized Daisy. I got to baptize Cora.
That's right.
If they have any more kids, they're going to have to fly back.
Yeah.
That's just how this works, right?
That's right.
And they can watch us on this. Hopefully they'll check in from time to time.
That's right.
Online.
And that's the beautiful part.
Keep
You don't
connected.
have to physically be in Las Vegas to be
Yeah.
part of this community anymore. Witness the folks who are online right now, some
Yeah.
from Vegas, some from
Right.
Chattanooga, some from Seattle. We've got folks all over the place.
What happens to the godparents when they stay, let's say they stay in Las Vegas and people move away? What kind of obligation do you have under those circumstances?
Interesting.
Really comes down to the relationship they have with the parents. Right? The godparents in this particular instance aren't even going to be here. They're going to be FaceTiming in from,
Oh, wow.
I think, New Jersey, because they're not able to come and participate in person.
So they're getting
So
closer.
technology is a really cool thing.
When it works, it's great.
When it
Yes.
works, it's great. Sometimes a little sketchy, but at the moment it seems to be working. So that's a good thing. All right, and we're going to wrap up a minute or two early so I can go greet the baptismal party. Blessings on the rest of your day, my friends.
Yes.